After the release of his album Astral Weeks in 1968, Van Morrison took a less polished, more emotional approach. He was exhausted. He'd spent years battling his previous record label to get out of a contract, and was now heading back to New England once again, to Cambridge, where he could recover and rediscover his creativity. This is the story of Moondance. When we started designing our new merch collection, we wanted to celebrate lyrical creativity, if you will, and Van Morrison's Moondance seemed like a fun place to start. And personally, I liked the idea of a connection to wildlife, because I can imagine like the forest at night under the moonlight, the song in the background. Anyways, check out the collection through the link in our bio. Let's get into the story. Van Morrison grew up in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and his father was known as one of the most prolific record collectors in the country at the time. This meant that Van grew up listening to all kinds of different stuff. Crooners and blues musicians, heavily influencing his own impulses in music later on. Those influences would come to life on his studio album, Moondance, and the title track would be his effort at creating a jazz standard like the ones that Nat King Cole or Frank Sinatra would have sung. For the lyrical imagery in the song, he was inspired by the beauty of New England in autumn, which was his favorite season. The leaves on the trees falling and blowing in the crisp wind at dusk, and the moonlight takes over the sky, and the creeping sound of the piano carrying Van Morrison's voice that glides in like a swooping eagle under the whimsical little flute on top. It's quite magical. The songs were a lot more structured on this one. It had a much more polished vibe to it that his record label was very excited about. And Van Morrison was excited about being able to lean into these jazz sensibilities. Both Cambridge and Woodstock and all along the East Coast were people who were blending jazz and folk in new and interesting ways. And he was very drawn to this sort of experimentation. The label did not choose the title track as a single, instead going with Come Running and Crazy Love. Moondance, however, thought to be too jazzy for pop radio, was still one of Van's favorites to perform live, and it grew in popularity that way, becoming kind of a cult hit for those in the know. Based on all this lore, in 1977 the label decided to release the song as a standalone single, 7 years after it was initially introduced on the album. It wasn't really a hit or anything, but it did get very heavy rotation on the radio, making it one of the most extremely recognizable tracks of Van Morrison's career. If you dig the vibe that we're going for with this shirt and want to see the rest of the music fan inspired collection, check it out through the link in our bio.